I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest. And again, I'll remind you of your responsibility to do so. Nothing. The next item is additions, deletions, or amendments, and we have nothing to that. So we move on to adoption of minutes, and it's been moved by Councillor Minaj and seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber that Council adopts the minutes of the council meeting of August 22nd, 2016 as presented. Any errors or omissions? Not. All in favor? That's carried. The next item is the Committee of the Whole minutes of August the 22nd, and it's been moved by Councillor Rich and seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau that Council note and file the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of August the 22nd, 2016 as presented. Any errors or omissions? Not. All in favor? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is an Environmental Services and Transportation Report of August the 22nd, and it's been moved by Councillor Rich and seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau that Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the Environmental Services and Transportation Report dated August the 22nd, 2016, recommending approval of the submission of the traffic signal plans for the proposed Godridge Street and Devonshire Street traffic light installation to the Ministry of Transportation. Questions? Comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is a report of the Municipal Office, a staff report to do with our 150th funding. And it's been moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Councillor Dave Mayette. Council authorizes staff to proceed with a grant application to the Canada 150 Community Infrastructure Program for the project costs associated with the main floor and board replacement at the Southampton Coliseum. Questions, comments? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question with regard to the report, perhaps to be directed to the director. The report just makes a statement that is interesting. I just wanted to verify it for council that the true replacement of the flooring will ensure that the facility is standing for another 30 to 40 years. So is it I mean, we just put a fine point on that. We can really say that there's no other major structural issues that we would face in there for the next 30 or 40 years, are not likely to be any major structural issues, that this really could secure that facility for that length of time. That's a really incredible thing.
I wish I could look at my glass ball and tell you that was the case, but I think we all know that's not the case. There certainly could be some structural repairs over the next 30 or 40 years, roof being one of them. Operation repairs, those are continuous, but this is a major replacement, and I apologize for putting it on council. Obviously, I'd like to put it on committee of the whole so you have some broader discussion on this, but the opportunity became available for this grant. This makes good sense for this application because of the price and because of the revenue source that goes along with this facility. Hence the reason why staff felt this was a valid candidate to apply for this project.
I think it's a great thing, but it's a shame that it isn't necessarily the only thing we're going to have to do. But I mean, it would go a long way to securing the thing for the future, and that's good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any further questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item is a staff report, and it has to do with the award a tender for the main beach washrooms. And it's been moved by Councillor Minaj, seconded by Councillor Grace, that Council authorizes the firm of Steinhoff Building Services Group be engaged at a cost of $29,000 plus applicable taxes for the preparation of an architectural design and engineering for the Port Elgin Main Beach Washroom. Comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another question for the director. Do we have a sense, if presuming this is approved tonight, of the timelines going forward, how we would proceed from this stage through to eventual construction, and what that looks like going forward?
Yeah, obviously I put this on council so that we could move this more quickly. So within the next few weeks, we'll be working with a consulting firm, to get some drawings completed, and where more valuable, we want the costing to move forward for our 2000 budget. So we anticipate having something to us at least by November. Put that into the capital.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The available funding is already there, right? I mean, we have to approve a project within the funding pool that we've approved in 2016.
Correct.
So are we in fact waiting for the 2017 budget for some sort of approval, or can we move forward?
I will do that as part of my
see.
presentation with 2017 budget.
But we're not waiting for the 2017 budget for some kind of approval from council that the process will move forward, and so our hope is construction in the spring. Is that the thinking?
I can't guarantee that.
Sure.
Construction probably would be more ideally in the fall after the season, to be quite honest with you. And the reason we would do that is if we ran into any issues, we certainly wouldn't want to prolong an opening of a washroom facility. So our safeguard would be to do it in the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Minaj.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Jane, for pursuing this. I know that the Waterfront Committee, ad hoc committee, has worked well with you and tried to push this along to the point where it might have strained relationships at times, and it's something that we believe in, and the committee would like certainly to have another look at it when it comes back, and I'm sure council will as well. I would be disappointed to think that we wouldn't try to build this at our earliest opportunity and not let another year slip by. So the push will still be on, and I recognize that and respect that staff can only do so much in a year, and my hope is that we can figure out a plan on how to make this work, because with all these hot summers and so much beach usage, it is so sorely needed. Thank you.
Any further questions? All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed, if any? That's carried. There is a notice of motion on this here. It'll appear on the agenda for disposition at our next meeting. It's a notice of motion on the Island Street drain. You can see it. So we now move into bylaws. First one is authorize a site plan agreement with Grenville Estates, and it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, seconded by Councillor Rich, that bylaw 97-2016, being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement with 1931256 Ontario Incorporated, Grenville Estates, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of September 2016. Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item is authorize a winter maintenance agreement on the connecting link, and it's been moved by Councillor Dave Mayat, seconded by Councillor Grace, that bylaw 98-2016, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Own Sound Highway Maintenance Limited, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of September 2016. Any questions or comments to the motion or bylaw? If not, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item then is a rezoning for 473 Market Street, and it's been moved by Councillor Mike Myatt and seconded by Councillor Madison, that bylaw 99-2016, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75-2016, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Saugeen Shores by Deborah and Jerry Donkersgood for lands described as 473 Market Street, town of Saugeen Shores, Port Elgin, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of September 2016. Questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this motion. There was a comment made earlier about two amazing planners, Molly and Lee, and I want to second that. I think that Molly and Lee do a fabulous job for the town of Saugeen Shores, and I just wanted to echo the comments from an early presenter. As I mentioned, I'll be supporting the recommendation. This property is zoned R2 and residential second density, which allows for 40-foot lots. Single detached dwelling in an R2 zone must have a 12 meter or 40 foot of frontage and a minimum lot size of 450 square meters, Mr. Mayor. The proposed lots are 590 square meters. So basically, the lots are 30% larger than required in the R2 zone. Two homes being constructed are 24.5 feet by 44 feet, and doing that math is about 1,100 square foot. Two single-family dwelling homes in an R2 zone permitted use. Take a drive down Market Street, you will see homes of all sizes, including some larger homes. And I've driven down that street many times, and there are plenty of smaller-sized homes on that street as well. The two proposed lots do not require, and it's important for the council to realize this, I think. The two proposed lots do not require relief under our existing zoning bylaw, as this application meets all requirements for an R2 zone property. In response to concerns raised by residents along Market Street, the applicants have agreed to 3 conditions of approval. Front yard setback for each new home will be 12 meters rather than 6 meters. Privacy fence will be constructed along the east side of the property. Privacy fence will be constructed along the north side of one of the properties to the north. I want to add this point. The fencing and enhanced landscaping are not typically required for single-family detached dwellings as conditions of approval. However, the applicants were agreeable to adding these conditions in an attempt to address comments received from Market Street residents in the Planning Advisory Committee. If any member of the council is concerned about the owner adding secondary suites at a later date, it's important to note that this would not be allowed due to a restriction we placed in our zoning bylaw, whereas secondary suites require a minimum 15-meter wide lot. This is a 40-foot wide lot. Our official plan speaks to intensification, and this is our official plan. Talks about intensification target policies, and worth noting that under section 3.3.51 of our own official plan, we have established a minimum intensification target of 10%. This council, preceding council, approved that. This means that a minimum of 10% of all development is to occur in the built-up area, and Market Street is considered a built-up area in our own official plan. This is infilling, and in keeping with our official plan, these 2 lots being considered for single-family dwelling units are contributing towards us reaching our intensification targets. Mayor, when this application first came to PAC, I felt that our committee listened to the concerns of Market Street residents, and I want to make it clear that the original application was for 2 apartment units on each side of the lot. That request was deferred by the Planning Advisory Committee as PAC was understanding of the residents, including myself, and in agreement with the concerns of the neighborhood regarding the adding of 4 additional apartment units into this R2 zone property. So in my view, we did listen, and changes have been made to the original application submitted by Mr. and Mrs. Donkersgood. And as you heard earlier, the Donkersgoods are planning living in one home, they're planning renting one of the other units. I just want to leave this one more comment. When I cast a vote at Planning Advisory Committee, and there have been three recently, that if I had changed my vote, those recommendations would not have been approved, and I dare say that all 3 would be heading to the Internal Municipal Board. I asked myself, will this decision pass the OMB test? In my view, with our planners recommending approval, Planning Advisory Committee approving, is imperative again, in my view, Council approve this application without further delay. And Mr. Mayor, those are my comments. I thought about this application, and I still see no reason why this application should not be approved, and I'll stand by that decision. I do have a question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, and is it permissible to ask the question through you to our planner? So I see Leah's here this evening, and one of the comments I heard earlier, Leah, was if the 2 40-foot lots were rezoned to R1. The question was, I think that was a request to have them moved to an R1 classification, to protect against renovating the properties and turning them into apartment units. You heard the question earlier about R1 turning into R1. What impact, if any, would that have with turning into R1? And I'm not proposing that, by the way. I'm supporting the motion as is. But could you comment on that, please?
Mr. Mayor, through you. Councillor Myatt, it would be of no consequence, meaning it wouldn't make any difference if the new zoning was R1 or R2. What matters is the width of the lot and the lot area, as well as the use. So let's just use the example if it were to stay R2, and if the building department at some point in the future received a building permit application for a single family home to be converted to have a second apartment in there. Simply put, based on today's zoning bylaw standards, a building permit could not be issued for that conversion. The exact same is true if the lots on either side were zoned R1.
A final comment. These decisions at PAC, if correct decisions are not made, they can be very costly to the community. Very costly to the community. I changed my vote the other night. If I do, that's not approved by PAC. And I dare say, that application makes it all the way to the OMB. And again, that's a little bit of speculation. But those are costly. And somebody say, well, on the other side of the coin, what if people from Market Street decide to fight it and they win? Yes, that's still costly. But I just think it's a bit of a slippery slope here. And so again, you've heard my comments, and I would encourage this council to approve the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have a question for Ms. Berry, if possible. And so my question is concerning the existing fourplex in the middle. It's my understanding from reading the bylaw that it says that the maximum number of dwelling units be no greater than 4. So my question is a hypothetical one. If this building, which is in a fairly old building, if it is torn down at some future date, will this application allow the owner of the property to build another 4-unit dwelling in that spot?
Mayor, through you, the intent of the provision that you refer to is that it applies to the existing building that's there today. So that is the building that may contain the 4 units, but it isn't intended to allow for, should a building be torn down, a new 4-unit apartment building to be built.
Okay, so, but the application, if approved, says that this is now a legal conforming status. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so why wouldn't it be able to be replaced by a new 4-unit dwelling if it's now conforming?
Mr. Mayor, through you, there is development potential on the remnant parcel as the lines have been proposed, the new lines for the shoulder lots. And it was discussed both with the owners and with staff as to what potential that middle piece may have should that existing building no longer be there. It's remaining a substantially sized lot, and essentially it would allow for some variety in new development in the future for a different owner. Or the same owners.
Potentially then, once it loses its non-conforming status, if this application is approved, then that building could be taken down and a new 4-plex unit could be constructed.
If I understood, Mr. Chair, again through you, sorry, if I understood that correctly, it sounded like that was maybe the opposite to what I said. So if the existing 4-plex were to come down, a new 4-plex would not be permitted if this bylaw that's drafted for you now is to be approved. If it's council's desire to enable a new 4-plex on the remnant parcel to be constructed, should this existing 4-plex be torn down, then that provision can simply be redlined to indicate that.
Does that mean there would have to be a whole new application process for that to happen? I'm not... Okay, so there would be a new rezoning application that would be required?
The extent of the change, maybe that I'm referring to, if council wanted to redline this bylaw, in my opinion, would not be required to be recirculated as a new application. That sort of finite detail had not been circulated in previous applications, meaning the draft bylaw was not circulated as part of a standard agency circulation period. So, and that's, again, where the application is typically circulated once received by the town. So the details in the draft bylaw are available online and are available through the public process, but again, is not circulated at the front end of the planning process. So again, in our estimation, a new application would not be required.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, question. I don't exactly know who I should pose this question to. So, we're going to be left with 3 R2 lots afterwards, correct? Can we make an amendment so there's 3 R1 lots? No.
That, but I think that if that was part of the original circulation, then I think that if we're proposing an amendment, probably should be referred back to planning advisory and recirculated.
I would just seek, Mr. Mayor, your direction for what exactly you would or council would like to be contained within the recirculation. So to whom and what material that would be, just to follow along in the standard planning process through the Planning Act.
Yeah. If there's going to be substantially changed into the original application, then in fairness, that it should be go back to the process again, as so everybody could get another opportunity at, because it becomes a new application then.
And if
Almost
I
a new
can add
application. Yeah, go ahead.
to that, Mr. Mayor,
If I'm wrong, by all
with
means, correct me.
respect, the intent, perhaps, Mr. Mayor, through you, Councillor Rich, the intent of the development isn't changing. So regardless of any of the labels that are put on any of the remnant parcels, any of the 3, that doesn't change the intent of the development proposal as has been circulated as recently as the September 1st PAC meeting. So there would not be new information as far as the development proposal to be circulated.
For clarity again, and Leah did mention that whether it's R1 or R2, it really doesn't matter with what the use is proposed here. So it's just a designation.
My only concern is that we do have people that have a feeling of fear that somewhere down the line, and obviously there is some ambiguity because Councillor Grace was trying to discuss what was going on with that middle lot, and that is the kind of thing that I think would give these people that are worried a little bit of security if they felt like it was all R1 lots and that would be the end of it, right? Now they feel like that there's still an opportunity for intention or working with intention where I would prefer to work with clarity as opposed to intention.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that. Thank you. Through you, and perhaps generally to yourself and all of council, with respect, the zoning bylaw is interpreted by the bylaw, the interpretation of the bylaw is up to the chief building official in the municipality, simply put, and there are any number of ways that we can assist the municipality in educating the public and the community, and certainly staff and council, in how the zoning bylaw is read and what it means. But when it comes to the rules and the regulations within that document, it is subject to only the interpretation of our municipality's chief building official. So in terms of perhaps optics, if I can name them that, or what helps people feel better. I don't feel that as a staff member here reporting to you that it's my place to suggest what all of the public may or may not feel comfortable with. Certainly we do have a large group here with us this evening who have attended previous PAC meetings, but it by no means represents the entire community. So there, I would offer, is also a section of the community who does understand what the R2 zone means and what the R1 zone means and how it can be applied.
So when you were explaining this to me, and I'm not well versed in this. I need to be educated at all times. It's just the struggles that I have with council. But you use two phrases that always make me feel uncomfortable. You said intention first, and I'm not really sure I like the term intention. And you also used the phrase at this time, and so at this time means that is subject to change depending on exactly what the building inspector of the day or what the council of the day says. But if it is actually zoned R1, then there is no at this time or intention. It's very clear. That's my only point.
Mr. Mayor, as a further education for council, when we have documents like the official plan for the municipality or the provincial policy statement, those are planning documents full of policies that are subject to interpretation. A zoning bylaw, on the other hand, is black and white, and regardless of the actual person, the staff person who's responsible for applying the zoning bylaw and understanding it, the ambiguity that I'm hearing that may be present here is not actually in the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw is very clear in terms of the sections that it sets out, whether we're looking at the R1 section or the R2 zone section, in speaking to everything to decimal points as far as lot widths, lot areas. It has minimums. In some cases, it has maximums. So I would offer to you, Councillor Rich, that there are really no doors left unopened, so to speak, for ambiguity in the zoning bylaw. I think it's very specific, and that's how the municipality treats it and how staff enforces it.
Yeah, I think for clarity, and I think if it's the center, if it's the fourplex that we're talking about, if you look at, and again, this is a site-specific bylaw. This deals just specifically with this piece of property. If you look at the item I there on 2, it says, what is permitted? The existing apartment dwelling will be permitted as it exists on the day of the passing of the bylaw. That interpreted to me means that's all that exists. And if that's tore down, then whatever is proposed would need to go through the planning process again.
That's correct, unless what's proposed complies with any of the other R2 standards. And if I may, just for a moment, take a look at this copy of the bylaw that's in front of you. I'll just confirm that. Mr. Mayor, I again just draw your attention to the introductory statement that notwithstanding the R2 zoning designation, those lands delineated, R29, may be used in accordance with the permitted uses and regulations of the R2 zone contained in this bylaw, except the existing apartment dwelling be permitted. I'll stop there. It doesn't say that only the existing apartment building be permitted. So if in the future this fourplex was gone and there was a proposal that came forward that managed to comply with the R2 zone and all of the specific black and white regulations that it contains, then a building permit could be issued for that proposal.
Any further questions? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment. I guess I was privileged, I guess is the word to use, to take part in the zoning bylaw updates discussions the last time around as an alternate on PAC, and I know that the intensification targets were a hot topic of discussion at that time among the Planning Advisory Committee members, and I think it's there was a lot of concern about those intensification targets, that 10% intensification target making the suggestion that it wasn't in tune with the type of community that we were trying to build, a rural community, a community that maybe wasn't as intense as that, but what it boiled down to ultimately, and the reason it ended up in there, is because we're pretty hamstrung. The province has pretty well boxed us in on that and said you're going to either put that 10% in there, but or if you don't, you can go ahead and put whatever number you want in there. But when it comes up to us, we're just going to kick it back to you with 10% in it. So a lot of this stuff, this intensification, that's part of this application, and it's going to be part of other applications across the municipality, is stuff that has been dictated to us from Queen's Park, and it may not be real suitable for the town of Saugeen Shores. I don't know if some people will think it is, some people will think it isn't. But I think the question was raised by the applicants about whether you'd like to see this happening in the rest of the community. And I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, I guess, it is going to keep rolling out, I suspect, in other parts of the community. There will be more intensification. This is something that is in the provincial policy statement and is mandated now by the province, I think. So I think we have a little bit of room to wiggle in there, but I think that, as you head down this road, you're going to ultimately see more of these intensification projects happening. And but on the other hand, when you hear from people in the community about some of the work we're doing in the woodlands and extending out into wooded areas and into agricultural land, and people not being very content with us doing that, this sort of intensification is the alternative. And the only other alternative is to say that no more people can build in the community, which I think isn't a reasonable alternative. So I think this is the path we're heading down on a macro scale of seeing more intensification in the urban areas of the municipality. And I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Has a request, perhaps somewhere down the road, maybe we could have a report about what infilling means in terms of how we're doing, what the boundary would be that's considered the area for infilling, because we're creating a lot of lots where we've recently had big apartment complexes come by us. We just had a townhouse unit on Arlington. There's building going on in developed parts of the community. So it'd be interesting to just sort of have a comment about what's the boundary that's the area that's the 10% hits, just for future reference. I appreciate Leah, the planner, saying that it's of no consequence, I think is the way she put it, whether it's R1 or R2. And the word intention is a little concerning to me too, as Councillor Rich alluded to. When back in the day, 1986, or even when amalgamation happened, when some zoning things were there, this particular property was kind of sitting there by itself with a different zoning than the area around it. And, we can't know how that happened, why that happened, but I would presume, from what I heard from Jay, back in 1986, there was some number of zoning on there that the fourplex was okay. Well, then when amalgamation happened, R2 hit this lot, and I would, without knowing really, maybe the intention was at the time that because it's surrounded completely by R1, putting R2 there was the council of the day's attempt to bring some order to the neighborhood, that recognizing that there was this one property sitting there. So I think if you look at the zoning map, not just the zoning bylaw, where we've got R2 areas in the community, the intent in those areas is to have a mix of residential units, which is why R2 has lots of possibilities. I don't really think that what the zoning map illustrates in a big way is that we have a community where there's one lot in the middle of an area that's zoned completely differently. There's one lot sitting there in the middle that kind of has its own status. So when this application came along, it was a chance to take a good look at the non-conforming status of the fourplex and try and realize some improvement. Well, I started off with the duplexes were really not a good idea in my mind, because you got 4, then 2 and 2. That's 8 on what used to be, in some people's opinion, a single-family dwelling unit. Then we come around to getting the single-family units on the side. That's a little more palatable, but it's completely surrounded by R1. So it would have made sense to me to have left the remnant lot in the middle has R2 because that's what it's got, and the fourplex poses some problems potentially in the future, but it's there right now. It can stay there. But I'm really, I'm not sure why we didn't get an application that zoned the two on the sides as R1 if they are single family. So I found this application a little bit confusing, and if it's of no consequence, whether it's R1 or R2, then why not R1 if it's single family? So, thank you.
Okay, I think we've had some good discussion on it. If we're ready for the question, I'm going to ask you all in favor of this motion. Opposed? That carries. The next item on the agenda then is bylaw for the rezoning of 189 Side Road 2829. And it's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, seconded by Councillor Minaj, that bylaw 100-2016, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75-2016, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Saugeen Shores by North Bruce Farms Limited, in care of Harry Kalin, for lands described as Part Lot 28, Concession 2, Town of Saugeen Shores, Geographic Township of Saugeen, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of September 2016. Comments or questions to this motion or bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. This next is a confirmatory bylaw, and it's been moved by Councillor Madison and seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt. The bylaw 101-2016, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 12th day of September 2016. All in favor? Carried. It's been moved by Councillor Madison, seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt, that this regular council meeting of September the 12th, 2016, hereby adjourned at 9:22 p.m. All in favor? We're adjourned.